The letter didn't say please. It didn't say concern. It didn't even say warning. It said final notice in bold, capital letters, like a threat carved into stone. And beneath that, in cold, legal language, was a sentence that made my hands shake. Failure to comply will result in the immediate removal of the animal from the premises. They weren't talking about a fence. They weren't talking about paint color. They weren't talking about trash cans. They were talking about my pet. The one thing in that house that had never judged me, never fined me, never knocked on my door with a clipboard and a fake smile. The HOA had officially crossed a line, and they had no idea who they were messing with. I still remember the day I brought him home. He was small, shaking, ribs showing, eyes too big for his head. The shelter worker told me, "No one wants him. He's been returned twice." I didn't ask why. I didn't care. The moment he crawled into my lap and refused to move, that was it. He chose me. From that day on, he was family. Not property. Not a rule violation. Family. Which made the next knock on my door feel less like a visit and more like a declaration of war. It was 8:17 in the morning. Too early for neighbors. Too early for nonsense. I opened the door and there she was. Clipboard. Sunglasses. Tight smile. HOA badge clipped proudly like a medal. The kind of woman who enjoys power not because she needs it, but because she's never had any real authority in her life. She didn't even look past me at first. She just started talking. "I'm here regarding your non-compliant animal." Non-compliant. That's what she called him. I told her calmly, "He's registered. He's vaccinated. And he's allowed." She smiled wider, like she'd been waiting for that. Not under the updated community standards. That's when she finally glanced down. He was sitting right behind my leg, tail wagging slowly, trusting me completely. No idea that a stranger in a pressed blouse was already planning his removal. She wrinkled her nose. Certain breeds are considered problematic. Problematic. Funny how they never say dangerous when there's no proof. Just vague enough to scare people. Just official enough to sound legal. I asked her to show me the rule. She tapped her clipboard. "You'll receive it in writing. Until then, consider this your verbal notice." I laughed. Couldn't help it. That annoyed her. Failure to remove the animal within 14 days will result in enforcement action. I asked, "Enforcement by who?" She paused. Just a fraction of a second. "Authorized services." That's when it hit me. They weren't bluffing. They were threatening to take him. I closed the door without another word. No yelling. No argument. Just silence. Because silence scares people like her more than shouting ever could. That night I didn't sleep. He curled up beside my bed, snoring softly, completely unaware that a group of bored retirees with too much time and too little empathy were trying to erase him from my life. I reread the letter they slid under my door 3 days later. Same words, same threat. Only this time there was a date. They'd already decided. So I started digging. And the deeper I went, the uglier it got. First, I pulled the HOA bylaws. The original ones. Not the updated community standards they like to wave around. The ones filed with the county. The ones that actually mattered. No breed bans. Not one. Then I checked state law. Turns out, in my state, HOAs cannot enforce breed-specific restrictions without clear, documented safety incidents. Guess how many incidents were on record? 0. But that wasn't enough for them, because this was never about safety. It was about control. I started talking to neighbors, quietly, casually, and suddenly the stories started pouring out. They tried to find me because my cat sits in the window. They told me my dog looked aggressive. He's blind. They threatened to call animal control on my neighbor's service animal. That last one made my blood boil. This wasn't a one-time power trip. This was a pattern. A board that had gotten comfortable pushing people who didn't push back. Until now. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Thursday night. I showed up early. So did she. Same sunglasses. Same clipboard. Same fake smile. But this time when she saw me, her smile slipped. Because I wasn't alone. I brought copies. Printed bylaws. state statutes, county filings. I sat in the front row and waited. When public comments opened, she tried to move on quickly, gloss over it, rush the agenda. I stood up, and suddenly the room went very quiet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult anyone. I just asked one simple question. Under which filed bylaw are you threatening to remove my pet? Silence. She shuffled papers. I'll have to consult our legal team. I nodded. Good, because I already did. That's when the whispers started. Board members leaning toward each other. Neighbors turning around in their seats. Phones coming out. I continued. You are threatening an action you are not legally allowed to take. And if you proceed, it will not be animal control responding. Now she looked nervous. It will be my attorney. She tried to interrupt me. I didn't stop. And the lawsuit won't be about a pet. Now the president shifted uncomfortably. It'll be about harassment, emotional distress, and abuse of authority. That's when I saw it. Fear. Real fear. Because for the first time, someone wasn't scared of them. The meeting ended early. Very early. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because 3 days later, a truck pulled up outside my house. And on the side of it were words that made my stomach drop. Animal services. They had done it anyway. They thought I wouldn't be home. They thought I'd panic. They thought wrong. And what happened next changed everything. The truck idled outside my house like it belonged there. White doors. County seal. Official enough to scare most people into silence. Animal services. My pet stood beside me at the window, tail wagging, trusting as ever. No barking. No fear. Just calm. I opened the door before they could knock. 2 officers stepped out. One older guy, calm eyes. One younger woman already scanning the yard like she expected chaos. I held the letter in my hand. Before you say anything, I told them, you were sent here under false authority. That caught their attention. The older officer asked, you the homeowner? Yes. And that your dog? Yes. Registered. Licensed. No incidents. No complaints. He nodded slowly. That's not what we were told. Of course it wasn't. I handed him the paperwork. HOA letter. Highlighted threats. Printed bylaws. State statute. He read quietly. Then he sighed. We get calls like this more than you'd think. The younger officer frowned. This says removal authorized by the HOA. He shook his head. HOAs don't authorize us. Law does. He handed everything back. We can't take your pet. That's when a car screeched to a stop behind the truck. I didn't even need to look. I already knew who it was. She stepped out like she owned the street. Sunglasses, clipboard, phone already recording. There you are, she said loudly. I'm glad you're here, officers. This animal is in violation of. The older officer cut her off. Ma'am, this is a civil HOA issue, not an animal control matter. Her smile froze. But the board approved enforcement. He crossed his arms. Did the board approve making a false report? Dead silence. The younger officer looked at her. You told dispatch this dog was aggressive. She stammered. Well, I felt threatened. The dog sat down. Right on cue. Tail wagging. Friendly eyes. The officer raised an eyebrow. Buy that. Neighbors had started coming outside. Doors opening. Phones out. Curtains pulling back. She realized it too late. This wasn't behind closed doors anymore. This animal has been documented as a nuisance, she snapped. I finally spoke. Show them the documentation. She flipped through her clipboard frantically. Nothing, because it didn't exist. The older officer exhaled slowly. Ma'am, filing a false report is serious. Her voice dropped. So you're just not going to do anything? He looked at me, then at my pet. We're done here. They got back in the truck. But before leaving, the older officer leaned toward me and said quietly, you might want a lawyer. I smiled. I already have one. The truck drove off. She stood there exposed, furious, powerless. You think this is over? She hissed. I looked at her calmly. No. Now it started. That night, my attorney sent a letter. Not a warning. A demand. Cease and desist. Documentation requests. Records preservation notice. And the magic words. Litigation pending. Within 48 hours, the HOA went silent. No emails. No letters. No fines. Then something even better happened. A leak. Someone on the board panicked. Minutes from meetings surfaced. Emails. Internal messages. They weren't worried about safety. They were worried about setting an example. About reminding residents who's in charge. About me being difficult. That was the nail in the coffin. Because courts love patterns. And this was a pattern of abuse. Neighbors started reaching out. Then more. Then dozens. Turns out I wasn't the only one they'd threatened. I was just the one who didn't back down. The HOA's attorney tried to settle quietly. My lawyer laughed. The hearing was public. Packed courtroom. Board members sitting stiff, suddenly very small without clipboards. She wouldn't look at me. The judge listened. Carefully. Every letter. Every threat. Every false claim. Then he leaned forward. An HOA does not get to terrorize residents under the guise of governance. He ruled fast. No removal. No fines. No enforcement. But he didn't stop there. He ordered a full audit of HOA practices, referred the false report to the county, and awarded damages. When we walked out, neighbors clapped. She slipped out the side door. 2 weeks later, she resigned. 3 months later, the board was replaced. The bylaws were rewritten. Clear, fair, legal. My pet still sleeps beside my bed. Safe. At home. And every time I see an HOA letter now, I smile. Because they tried to take the one thing I loved. And instead, they lost everything.